What's going on, guys? Welcome to module number 3 in this day trading course. I'm going to be covering how to find, draw, and validate strong supply and demand levels. All right, so let's head to the slides so I can cover a few steps. So in supply and demand, there are a couple of different scenarios. Number one is a continuation, which is a rally-based rally kind of zone. Okay, so you can see that the market is rallying, it is basing and rallying again. This point right here, where is the base, would be our point of interest. The next one is a rally, base, and a drop, which is a reversal. It's a rally. You can see the base, and then you can see a drop. This is generally a micro reversal, trend reversal, whatever you want to call it. Okay, and the base would be our supply level. Scenario number 3 is a drop, base, and a drop, which is a continuation and a downtrend. You can see the drop, you can see the base, and you can see a further drop. This base right here would be our point of interest, where the supply would be drawn. And then point number 4 is a drop, base, rally, which again is a market reversal. We have a drop, then a base, and then a rally, with this base being our point of interest. Now, there are a couple of things that we need to look at, a couple of criteria points that we need to use in order to validate a strong supply or demand level after we've established what kind of zone it is a continuation or reversal. So point number 1 would be a break of structure. So the more highs or the more lows, in case of a supply, is broken, the stronger the level is. Okay, so if you're looking on the H4 time frame, you find a demand and you can see that price has broken multiple highs on the left. Well, the more highs it broke, the stronger that demand is going to be. Point number 2 is very important. We need to see on the lower time frame a lot of consolidation before the move happens. Okay, so this is basically going back to the base. So in the base, we need to see a lot of consolidation before the actual drop happens. And in case of a demand in this base right here, we need to see on the lower time frame, such as the M1, the M2, or the M5, a lot of consolidation before the actual move happens, which is very, very important. We cannot just see a spike down and spike up. Okay. Point number 3 is we need to see follow through in the move. So going back to the first slide, in this move up here, this cannot just be one candle. It has to be a solid follow through move where you can see that a lot of buyers stepping in at this area right here in this base that were able to push the price higher very quick and aggressively. Point number 4, ideally, it's a fresh level that hasn't been touched before, so a new demand or new supply. That is not to say that used levels don't work. I use them and they do work. They just turn into sort of support and resistance, which is what I will cover in the next module in this day trading course. Point number 5, it has to be made from an engulf candle. So in the previous module where I talk about daily and weekly candles, there obviously I explain exactly what an engulf is. I'm sure most of you guys know that already, but it's important that this, after the base, this original move is made from an engulf candle, which just shows a lot more strength to it. And then the last point is the time frames. I use from the H4 all down to the M15. Obviously, the higher the time frame, the stronger the level is. But then again, if you find the zone maybe on the H4 and you don't like the consolidation in that area because the zone might be too big, they can just go to lower time frames and adjust it until all these points are checked and everything looks clean. Okay, so now that we've covered all these points, let's head to the charts and show you actually some examples of valid supply and demand levels. So here we are on the ES chart. So first of all, there's not going to be too many supply zones as of recently, as the market, as you can see, has been very uptrending. So mostly we'll cover demands, but we'll just go down to lower time frames and we'll for sure find some supply levels to validate. So here, for example, we can see an aggressive move up. You can clearly see there was a rally and then a base. Well, actually, there was a small base here and a small rally, but then again was another base and then a rally. This would be a continuation level. So this point number 1, and then we can see it is made of an engulf. We can see after this candle there was decent follow through. Of course, this is the H4 time frame. So if we go lower to an H1 time frame, you can see how much follow through there was from this move. So those points are obviously really good. So we're going to mark this zone so far and see on a lower time frame how this zone looks. Did it break structure? We can see that it broke this high over here. So Obviously in this uptrend and being at all-time highs, it cannot break too many highs. So we have this H4 high being broken right here. There are obviously more highs to be broken. So this is the only one that we have. So because we have multiple points already aligning to validate this zone. Now let's look on, for example, an M1 time frame and take a look at the consolidation. And as you can see right here, beautiful consolidation, especially here in this range right here before the actual move up. Okay, and as you can use another tool called fixed range volume profile. You can then take a look at this whole range and see where the most volume is before the actual move up happens. And you can see obviously the most volume is in this consolidation range. So all in all, this is a good zone, but maybe this zone could be adjusted to a lower time frame to maybe just include this part or draw it like this. So this is why we're going to go down to lower time frames than the H4 and see if we can adjust this zone a little bit and make it even better. So let's go down to the H3. We cannot see an engulf right here, so I'm not interested. You can see on the H2 also no engulf. On the H1 we can actually see an engulf right here. And you can also see on the H1 there's a lot of consolidation before the move actually happens. So if we maybe adjust this zone to right here, then we can see that we included the biggest volume area in this whole range. And now, as you can see as well, there was actually a drop and then a base. So maybe we can adjust this volume tool as well to see in this range where the most volume is. And as you can see right here, we included where the most volume is. There was no volume here in this move. Then a little bit of volume, then again a drop, and then a lot of volume right here with the point of control being there. So I would just draw this zone like this and leave it like that. This is a very clean level to me. Everything aligns. So this is already a first example of a good demand zone. Now let's take a look at the next demand that I can spot right now. So we have a rally, then a base and another rally. On the H1, obviously there wasn't too much follow through. As you can see, after this engulfing candle, price completely stopped and just went sideways for quite some time. But let's look at the other point. So it is made of an engulf. It broke this H1 high. Okay, it didn't break any other highs because obviously we're at all-time highs at that moment. So far this is a valid demand to me. Now let's look down on the lower time frame on the M1 if we find any follow through, if we find any consolidation. And there you can see how much consolidation there was, right? There was a rally and then a base and then another rally. So there was a lot of consolidation before this move went up, which makes this zone quite valid to me. Maybe we can go down on a lower time frame now and see if there was more follow through in this area. In the M45, let's see, we also have an engulfing candle. You can see a little bit more follow through. We can go lower on the M30. On the M30, obviously, you can see more follow through. And on the M15, we'll see even more follow through, how aggressive price just went. So I'm going to leave the zone like this, as I see quite some follow through on the lower time frame, M15, M30, M45. But I do like the consolidation range that we have here, and I ideally like to include this whole consolidation range and prices there right now. Obviously, it's a bit late in the session, so usually bigger moves will not come this late. They will usually obviously come within the first hour or two of the market open. Now it's already quite late, and it did show some reactions here already, but just not the biggest ones, and that might still come or not, who knows. Okay, so these are two valid zones that we were able to find, draw, and validate. Now let's try and find a supply. So as you can see right here, we had this rally, then a base, and now a drop is happening. So in this drop, we can already spot in this move down that the move was made of an engulfing candle on the H1 time frame. Yeah, this was an engulf of the previous candle. We can see clear follow through on the H1 as well. We can also see a lot of consolidation, of course, on the H1 before the drop happened, which is already good. This is also a scenario of a rally, base, and a drop, okay, which would be a market reversal zone. So we're gonna go and mark this level right here as a supply level. And we're gonna go down now to a lower time frame, such as the M1, and see the consolidation before the drop. And look at that. Look how much stacking of orders there were, how buyers and sellers were fighting where to push the price. And in the end, the sellers had just more volume and were able to push the price down from this level. So let me just look now on other time frames, because I see a lot of consolidation there and I want to draw it properly. So let's go down first up to the H4. We don't see an engulfing the H3. We don't see an engulfing H2. We do see an engulfing candle and follow through so far. So maybe we can adjust the zone and make it a bit bigger. So we can include more consolidation into this move. And as you can see already, the zone is a little bit bigger. Now I want to see if I can draw the zone even better. I go down to the M45. There's not really an engulf. This is a weak engulf. So I like the H2 so far. Here you can see it was an engulf, but what I don't like about this is this bottom wick. So let me go down even further to the M15, and on the M15 as well, you can see this engulf had quite a wick to the downside, which is what I don't like. So far the H2 for me is the cleanest. Now what we can do again is use our volume tool, our fixed range volume profile, which by the way you can find not here, but you can find it over here in this section. You can find it right here, fixed range volume profile. Okay, so let me just use that to draw this level maybe even more accurately. I'm gonna mark the whole range and see where the most volume is. And as you can see, if we zoom in properly, you can see the most volume was up until this price level right here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make this zone a little bit bigger like this until the volume actually started dropping drastically. And this really depends on you. You can make the zone even bigger, draw it up to here. I just like to include usually the biggest area. That's not to say that this area right here of volume is not big. I just preferably like to draw it where the most volume has been, obviously up until the high in this case of a supply. So this for me would be a valid supply level. You can see it was a clear rally base drop. It was made of an engulf. There's a lot of consolidation even on the H1, H2, H3, even the H4 has a lot of consolidation. So this will be a very strong supply level to look out for in the future. You can also see obviously a lot of follow through of sellers. So this for me would be a valid zone to look at, right? So I think I covered pretty much everything you need to know in order to find, draw, and validate supply and demand levels, at least the strongest one, the cleanest one. So as you can see, there's not too many levels on my chart. Obviously, I use support and resistance levels as well, the trade-off, but I will cover that in the next module. So this module was all about supply and demand, keeping it simple, making sure you choose the strongest levels on the chart so your chart is not fully clustered with levels everywhere. I hope this video was helpful to you guys, and I will see you in the next module.